If you have your notes, go ahead and open those up. You see, I entitled it Counterculture. You heard that term before, right? Counterculture. It's going, counterculture obviously means going against what the norms of a certain culture or society would be, going against that. How many can remember the 60s? There's a few hands go up right there, yeah. Remember the 60s. So the 60s was a huge counterculture time. What happens during a counterculture is kind of goes against the norms and mores of a culture, but oftentimes counterculture acts as a catalyst to change culture, right? So I've entitled this Counterculture, and the reason why I wanted to look at this is because how many of you watch the news and are just kind of disgruntled watching the news? You know, it's just all the negativity. Now I get it. I get that, you know, that's what sells, right? We all know that. And so we hear that. That's all we hear in the news is what's going on wrong and how bad it is. And, you know, oftentimes we get together as friends and we talk about, you know, when we were young, right? And how it seems to be worse now than it was when we were young. Is that true? I don't know if it's true or not, because we weren't bombarded with all the media, and social media wasn't so big, and so there's all kind of factors. But let's just take where we are right now, right? Let's not worry about comparing it to another time. And right now, I just think there is huge issues in our society today. I mean, things like just out of control materialism. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, everywhere you go, everywhere you look, we are absolutely bombarded with advertisements for stuff. You know, my friend down in Florida, he has some friends that have different businesses. Well, he has this one guy he's worth a boatload of money. And you know what he does for a living? He builds storage units, right? Think about that for a minute. We have so much stuff that we can't keep in our house. We have to go out and rent storage units. It is big business. They're tearing down restaurants. How many know you go down 51, right? Remember the old, what it used to be? Tambellini's, the old Tambellini's. Then it was these buffets and everything. They tore it down. Listen, to tear something down costs a lot of money. So to tear it down and build this huge storage unit, there has to be a lot of money in that, right? It just speaks, at least to me, it speaks to this out of control materialism. Now, listen, when I came back from Africa, we didn't own one thing. I mean, we had our clothes on our back, that was it. I always joke, there's 4 of us in our family, and I looked at one time, we had 5 TVs. How is it that 4 people living in a house have 5 TVs, need 5 TVs? Well, the fact is, I didn't need 5 TVs. Why I had 5 TVs, I'm not exactly sure. I didn't buy one of them. But the point is we'd start accumulating, huh? Do you ever dig through something like Michelle's getting her fall stuff out now and putting away summer stuff and finding this stuff, oh, I forgot I even had that. I didn't even realize it, you know? And sometimes you discover something that you've saved. We came back from Africa, we had stored a few things, not many, stored a few things. And things like her wedding dress. She kept her wedding dress. We kept some things that were sentimental, like a rocking chair of her mother's. But then we opened up this trunk and there was some other stuff saved there. Now mind you, we were gone for 4 years, a little over 4 years, and we didn't need it for 4 years. I open it up and I go, why in the world did we save this? You know, I haven't needed it for 4 years. I certainly don't need it now. But somehow I thought that I better hang on to this. And so I'm here to say that it's easy to fall into that trap of materialism. Another thing is just raging anxiety like never before, right? I mean, just think of and I'm not here to pick sides, mind you, but the politics in America right now are absolutely at toxic levels, in my opinion. And I'm not saying one side over another side. I'm just saying politics is at a toxic level. I mean, the anger and the hate and the word I kept coming back to, in this message is incivility. Incivility in our country today. It's crazy. Listen to this. So I did some research. So here's what incivility is. Disrespect. You see that in our politics, don't you? Just people just totally disrespecting one another. Rudeness, negative atmosphere of constant condemnation, one side condemning another. Now, it's not just reserved for politics, mind you. It's in all aspects of our society, of our culture. 95% of Americans believe that we have an incivility problem in America today. 95%. So the chances are the majority of us in here would agree with that. Go, yeah, we have a major problem in America of incivility, of disrespect, disregard for someone else, a negative atmosphere of constant condemnation. 70% believe that incivility has risen to a crisis level. Crisis level. Means, listen, we don't do something about it, we are in serious trouble. We're in serious trouble. 84% have personally experienced incivility. So maybe you have. Maybe you've been out there. Maybe it's in the workplace. Maybe it's just in driving your car or whatever. You've experienced in your own life incivility, a disrespect, a rudeness. You know, Pete and I were talking about, just before service, talking about what life was like when we were in college. So there was a Tennessee coach that just briefly grabbed a player's face mask, a quarterback's face mask. And it's all over the news. It's just, you can't do that kind of stuff. We talked about when we were in high school, that was a routine thing for our coach to do. You know what I mean? He'd probably be in jail now if he did that today. And so it is a different time, right? And no, in some respects, don't you agree that that's a good thing? Don't grab a guy's face mask. You can really do some damage. Don't you agree with that? Right? You don't do something like that. But on the other hand, it's to where when Pete was coaching at Elizabeth Forward, he was coaching football. You couldn't even holler at kids, and kids, mind you, this is kids in high school, junior high school, would say, "Yeah, you touch me, I'll sue you." Kids like that thought would never have entered my mind when I was in high school. Never entered my mind. And so I'm just bringing these things up to help us to see or understand, kind of where we're moving as a culture, as a society. Listen to this. 59% say, and maybe this is you too, say they've quit paying attention to politics because of incivility. Quit paying attention. I'm done. Now, that's not a good thing, is it? We should pay attention to the politics in our country. So kind of where you fit, where you stand, how you're going to vote, right? If you stop paying attention, what's that say? I've kind of given up. Why? So the question is this, friends. Why all the incivility? Like, why are we where we're at? Now, I'm not going to pretend that I have the answer, or it's so widespread. But I want to address it from a spiritual standpoint. I did a funeral this past weekend, and as it happens when people need a minister that are not really affiliated with the church, a thing that they often say to me is, I'll ask them about their faith or their persuasion or whatever, and they'll often use these words: well, we're not very religious, but we consider ourselves spiritual people. Isn't that interesting? How religion and spirituality have become mutually exclusive. Like how can that be, right? Religion is viewed negatively, spirituality is viewed positively. And so I got to thinking about it, and religion is about what I want other people to think of me. Spirituality is how I live and treat other people, right? And so I thought about that, and I think that's good. I think that's good. And so today, I want to bring this topic into into a spiritual arena. Now, I just got done with the whole series trying to advocate to us that all of life is spiritual, mind you. So I'm not recanting that, but I'm saying let's look at this then, and let's look at it as it's part of life, and how can we, if that's the way our culture is, how can we live counter-cultural? Okay? So that's where we're at. So sociologists have named this thing that's happening, and it happens to every culture eventually. Some cultures start like this, but it happens to every culture eventually and throughout all of time. And here's what sociologists call what's happening. Does anybody know? Call what's happening today? It's real simple. It's called tribalism. Tribalism. That's what they say is happening to our society today. Everyone has their own tribe. And anyone, so I lived in Africa, and of course, and this isn't derogatory, but in Africa, everybody's from a different tribe. My best friend over there, his name was Rock Bankusu, and he was from the Bembe tribe. And that was his name of his tribe. And his tribe had their own language, Bembe. And there were about 65 different languages in the Congo that I worked in. That meant there were at least 65 different tribes. The Congo that we were going to go back to had 270 different languages. Now, mind you, when I say different languages, I mean different languages. I mean English and Arabic. Those are different languages. That's what I mean. I'm not talking about, that's just dialects. No. Within the 270 languages, there are dialects within those. So the reason why I say that is that this constitutes that many different people groups, that many different tribes. And just like in America, we see today, we form ourselves in different tribes, right? Sometimes those tribes are political in nature, right? Yeah? Shake your head, yeah? You following me? Sometimes those tribes are religious in nature, yes? Religious in nature. And what sociologists are saying, this is the problem. The problem is tribalism. Everyone has their own tribe. Think about it just in terms of church. Hopefully not this church, but I'll confess to you in a little bit that I fall into this a little bit myself, okay? But I'll get to that in a minute. And so we fall into these different tribes, these different groups, whether it's socio-economic, right? Whether it's political. And these are hot topics. So here's what I want to do. Okay, it's going to be controversial, I know. But I'm going to present you with two different things. What I want you to do, I'll show them on the screen. When you see them, just to understand that, you love these people in here, okay? All right? But I want you to shout out, when you see two different things, just shout out as soon as you see it, where you stand on these two issues. You do that for me? Yeah? Again, we love each other, right? Okay. Let's go with the first one. Let's go with Nate. Okay. All right, there's some dissension already in here, right? Okay. Now the next one, this next one I know is going to be, don't rush the platform or anything, but show the next one. Penn State, we are! There's Penn State right there. Look at that sweatshirt right there. Can you stand up for a minute? Everybody turn around, everybody look right here. We are Penn State. All right, thanks my friend. All right, let's go to the next one. How about the next one? Shout it out. Well, a lot more Marvel. Marvel and DC. You guys don't know your comics? Marty, what are you shaking your head for? You don't like either one of them. Okay, let's get, okay, we had a little fun. Listen, the next one is probably, this is a serious one. Probably the most divisive thing in America today. So just shout it out. Go ahead and show it. Over. Anybody say under? No one said under. Good. We see that? That's why this is such a great church. Oh, okay, take that off there, Nate. Here's the thing. Isn't that funny? I know when my brother-in-law and sister got married, that was a topic, over under. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? But the truth is that it happens in a lot of serious places in our life, doesn't it? Right? I mean, listen, Steve and I go round and round about Pitt Penn State. You know what I mean? We'll joke each other in text. All of a sudden I realize, this is going a little bit past joking. You know what I mean? Okay, so.
I have my phone 20 times on me last night.
So, and so think about when you get to serious issues and serious topics. Here's the thing. We begin to think, so tribalism, we begin to think that people outside of our tribe are bad. Outside of our group, they're wrong. And then we begin to listen. Pay attention. This is important to everybody, young, old. Then we begin to demonize, and I think a lot of times we do this. It's so funny. Like when I talk to people about theology, I don't theologize in here, but I'll tell you, I love theology. But this isn't the place to talk about theology, right? But I'll talk to theology with anybody, right? Because I love to talk about, I love to discuss it, right? Thing is about that is that you believe something. Here, for example, if I were to ask you, any one of you individually, according to your theology, in other words, how you perceive God and what you think of God and so forth, do you think that you correctly perceive God in every area? Hopefully, you are mature enough, wise enough to answer that no. Because who's that smart? No one's that smart. I don't care how smart you are. No one's that smart. No one's that smart to understand the mystery to that degree. No one is. Okay, that being said, if I were then to break down your belief system into bite-sized bits and ask you, what about this one? You think that's true? Well, no, I think that one's true. And another one, do you think that's true? Yeah, I think that's true. And every one I would touch on, you'd say, I think that's true. And the reason is that you wouldn't hold to a belief that you think is wrong. Why would you hold to that? When you think it's wrong, you get rid of it and you adopt a different belief system. And so there's this paradox. Life is all about paradox, isn't it? And so when we take a stance on some place, now hear me now, this is what I find. When we take a stance on some place, and when someone argues a point in some area, here's what I find to be, I know I'm generalizing, what I find to be the case oftentimes. That person is less trying to convince me of their point of view, but they're trying to convince themselves of their point of view. The harder they fight, the harder they argue. They're trying to convince themselves. And isn't it true that when we have a position about something, that we try to convince as many people as we can about it, because if a lot of people believe something, well, then it must be true. And it's not true. You can be the sole dissenter on an issue, and you could be the one that's right. It's not necessarily found in, truth isn't found in numbers, right? There was a time when the majority of the people in the world believed the world was flat. Were they right? No. Copernicus and Galileo, dissenting voices, come out and say, you know what? Not only are we not the center of the universe, we're not even the center of our own solar system. And the church had a fit, put him under house arrest, wanted to kill him. So just because there's a majority of voice doesn't mean that you're in the right, that you're in the right. And that's important to know, isn't it? That's important to know that a position you may hold, that you may hold in a majority with a lot of people, you all may be wrong. We all may be wrong. Rick Warren said this. He said, in America, we've got to learn to disagree without demonizing the other. Learn to disagree without demonizing the other. And again, let me just reiterate this. The reason why we demonize oftentimes is because we're kind of uncertain about our own position. And so we demonize because they must be wrong. They have to be wrong. Because we're still unsure about our own stance, our own correctness. Listen to this, when all these people that I talked about were surveyed, they were asked, listen, and I could ask you about this incivility problem, how rampant it is and how it's permeated everywhere. They were asked this: do you see yourself as part of the problem? And they all answered, well, no, not me. Not me, I'm not like that, but everybody else is, but I'm not. Well, how can that be? How can everybody say, no, it's not them, but the problem exists? Let me tell you something. So here's what Jesus said. Jesus said, it starts with you. That's what he said. He said, it starts with you. So if I've said it one time, I've said it 100 times in here. Today's message is for you. So many people throughout the years have come up to me afterwards and go, that message was so good. I just so wish my was here. They really needed to hear that. And I go, well, that's so sad because you needed to hear that. I don't say that, right? But I want to say that. I want to say you needed to hear that. And somehow they didn't hear it. Or somehow, this is the problem for all of us, and I'm going to get into this here in a minute, you don't have a proper view of yourself because you've never tried to evaluate yourself. And so, well, that apply. If my spouse were here, they needed to be here. Was that recorded, Pastor Jeff? How can I get a copy of that? I'm like, oh my goodness, but it went over your head. So here's the thing, and I don't mean this in a negative way because every message this is for you, and this is for me. That's why I'm writing. That's why I wrote this. This is for me. And so Jesus said, it starts with you. So write this scripture verse down. Matthew chapter 7. I want you to read Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 6. I'm just going to start with the very first verse. And I'm not going to read it to you, but we'll touch on it through there. Jesus said this: judge not, or you too will be judged. Judge not. So I have two quick videos I want you to see. I think I've showed one of them in here before. I think I did. But about judging. How good do you think you are at judging what you see? Do you think you're good at it? You think you're good at seeing something take place and making an accurate, let's look at the videos. Show the first one there, Nate.
Hey, kid. You got to go down. Come on.
All right, show the next one, Nate.
Patient has a fractured fibula, given a mild sedative, so I could be able to go home tomorrow.
Daddy's gonna be so excited.
All good.
That killed him.
There's a whole bunch of those. You should watch them sometime, right? So Jesus says this: judge not, lest you be judged. How many are guilty of judging? Raise your hand nice and high there. We're all guilty of judging. Here's the thing: everybody knows this verse. I think it's a really popular verse, to believe it or not. I think people that are non-religious, non-spiritual, I think everybody knows this verse. They may not know it's in the Bible, but they know. They say, oh, judge not, judge not. It's so popular, but I think it's so abused. We use it, our kids use it against us as parents. don't judge me, right? They do something wrong. Hey, quit, don't stop judging me. I live my own life. I live my own way. Well, I think that's a little bit of abuse, right? What did Jesus mean when he said don't judge? Did he mean never critique, never discern, never correct, never help anybody that's gone astray? Of course he didn't mean that, right? Another part of it, so you have to take everything in context. You have to take it all as a whole. Other place he says this, he says, speak the truth in love. So you see something and you need to help somebody, you need to do it, but you need to do it in a loving way. I said a couple weeks ago about a prophet. How a prophet knows they're a prophet. See, some people think that a prophet is someone who foretells the future. Friends, that's not a prophet. No one can foretell the future. No one has ever foretold the future. Okay? The Bible's not about foretelling the future. Prophets didn't foretell the future. Prophets told the truth. That's what they did. And so, how you know you're a prophet, and we could apply the same thing to our life, whether you're speaking the truth in love. A prophet is going to say something hard to somebody, a people group, a person, but it's going to be very difficult for them to say. Very difficult. If you hear somebody come to you and go, yeah, I'm going to tell you, I'm just telling it for your own good, and it's easy for them to say, oh, you know what, maybe save it. Maybe save your critique or your opinion. But if someone comes to you and they're contrite in their spirit, it breaks their heart to have to even come and share something difficult. It's going to be difficult for you to hear, difficult for them to say. Listen. Listen to that person. Listen to that person. And so, he's not saying that we don't speak the truth in love. At times, we all need a close friend to say hard things to us. I need people to come to me sometimes and say, Jeff, this, what you're doing is not working. It's not working. You need to rethink that, or you're doing wrong. Or you're saying wrong, or you behaved wrong, you treated that person wrong. Am I right? Like, we all need people in our life that care for us enough, that love us enough, they're going to come and say those difficult things to us. So that's not what this verse is. That's not what this verse is about. Oftentimes, religious people misuse this too. I'd say I've heard a lot of sermons about this, right? This thing about, we judge the world. We judge and we condemn the world. Oh, the people out there. That's just part of tribalism. They're not us. And so we judge them and we say, oh, they're wrong, they're worldly, they're living in sin. Listen, what I've learned is church is just a slice of America, right? Just a slice of it. Let's take it off, bring it in here. Well, all the same issues, all the same problems, right? All the same thing that we say out there in the world. It's the same thing here. Because we're all human. We all suffer from the same human problems. And so, in church, we love to, and part of this judging is about labeling, isn't it? It's about labeling. How many of you in school were labeled when you were in junior high? And we were all labeled, weren't we? Smart or dumb or jock or head or, right? All these different things, or four eyes or fat or skinny or whatever it was. All these labels. It's part of this tribalism. Tribalism leads to labeling. Here's what we do. We size them up and we write them off. Isn't that true? We size them up and then we write them off. I'll be honest with you. If I'm not careful, listen, I tend to label. Someone will tell me about, oh yeah, I was going to this church, or that church. Are you sure you're gonna? I'm just being honest with you. I'm not proud that I do that, and I want to do that less and less and less. Again, this isn't about not confronting people that I love. Listen. If you don't have a relationship with somebody and you don't love them to the point where it's going to break your heart to share it with them, and you're just going to go tell somebody they're doing something wrong, just forget it. Let somebody else do it. Let somebody else do it. Because you think they're going to listen, number one? They're not going to hear anything from you. And so I try to catch myself when I find myself doing that, labeling. Think about it in your own life. Think about it this week. Try to catch yourself when you're doing it. You know, just recently, I've kind of made a commitment in my own heart and in my own mind that I'm going to try to do something. I'm going to try to not say anything about anybody that I wouldn't say if they were right there listening to me. You know what I found? It was about a week ago I decided to do that. Man, is that hard. Telling you it's hard. You don't believe me? Just listen. Don't even try to do it. Just think about it. Just think about it. Next time you're talking with somebody about somebody else, ask yourself, would I feel comfortable if somehow they were eavesdropping on me? Would I say this if I knew they were listening to me? Wow, that was a big one for me. Okay, I think I could do this. So let's open up your notes. We're going to start in the notes now. That was all free. That was all. I want to talk about just kind of 4 areas that I believe that if you will think about and you will start to, first off is think about it, is try to remember it. That's the first step. Because you can never apply something in your life or whatever until you start to do that, okay? So I tried everything I can to try to make this something you'll remember. So I made what's the word where you type each letter of a word, acrostic? Is that what that is? Anyways, so the word is RISE, an acronym. Is it an acronym? Yeah. An acronym, okay. It's RISE. And so what I want us to do is I want us to rise above the cultural tendency of tribalism. If we rise above the cultural tendency of tribalism, we'll no longer get in that place of labeling, of demonizing the other. So the first principle is this. You ready? The first principle to consider before you talk, before you respond, is the principle of reflection. And I get this all out of the text that we're going to look at. Here's the question you ask. Am I willing for this content and tone to be reflected back to me? So next time you find yourself talking about someone in a certain way, a certain content of your language, in a certain tone, ask yourself, am I willing to have that same content, that same emotion, that same tone reflected back to me? Listen, passage says this, for the same way you judge others, you'll be judged. Now, this don't over spiritualize. This isn't about God judging you. That's not what this is about. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. This isn't about, oh yeah, one day you're going to meet your maker and the way you judge, he's going to judge you. No, this is talking about life right here, right now. In the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. So the next time you find yourself, and that's what I've been trying to do in my life, next time you find yourself doing something like that, are you willing? Are you okay with that same thing being measured back to you in the same way? Matthew 7:12 says this, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. And this sums up the law and the prophets. He sums up everything. I love the way Jesus does that. He sums up everything that you see in the Old Testament. When you hear law and the prophets, that's the Old Testament. From Genesis all the way through to Malachi, all the Old Testament, right? That's what he's talking about, law and the prophets. He sums it all up by saying, listen, behave to people the way you want them to behave to you. You know that to be the golden rule, right? Golden rule. And I'm just saying it a different way. The principle of reflection. Because what he's saying is this is true. The way in which you'll be to people. So don't be surprised if people are gossiping about you. Don't be surprised. Think about your own life. Go, wait a minute, they're gossiping about me. Is that because I do that? Well, I don't want people to gossip about me. I don't want people to say stuff like that and be like that towards me. I don't want that. Okay, then, fine. Jesus said it starts with who? It starts with you. That's where it starts. It always starts with you. It always has and it always will. It starts with you. Not with your spouse, not with anybody else. It starts with you. This message is for you. This message is for me. And so the principle of reflection, judge others as you would have them judge you. How would you like people to judge you? I'll go first. Okay? I'll go first. I would like people to judge me accurately. You want people to judge you accurately? That's what I want. I'm not saying you can't judge me. Just judge me accurately. Judge me honestly. Think of the little videos I showed, right? At that moment, you see something, you can make a judgment call if you want, right? Do you know the whole story? Always ask yourself that. Something happens, ask yourself, do I know the whole story? I want people to judge me completely. In other words, I want them to know everything. I want you to, before you judge me, I want you to take into consideration my place in life that I'm at right now. Because that affects how I behave. I have two young men in college right now. So understand that in my actions, that's going to influence how I act. They both have girlfriends. They both are kind of going their own way. And so that affects a parent. Do you agree? Okay, so that's going to affect me and how I behave in certain situations, in certain circumstances. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take into consideration that. Take into consideration, I just buried my brother a month ago. I just buried my mother back in March. I buried a child when we came back from Africa. Do you think these things affect me? Absolutely they affect me. My father died when I was 17. So I want you to take into consideration a lot of aspects of my life. I was raised differently than you were raised. I was raised in a family of 6. Does that affect me? That affects me. That affects how I think and how I behave. See, but if you just see one thing, if you see one area of my life and you just judge on that and not think of anything else, you may come up with something that I am not. So I want you to judge me fairly and completely and honestly. And I think you want people to judge you that way as well. You know what else I want? I want people to take into consideration my intentions and not just my actions. My intentions. Because sometimes I have a great intention, I just do it bad. Is that you? Do you ever do that? You ever have great intentions, and then when it's all said and done, you look back and you go, wow, I did that bad. I could have done that differently. Man, that's like an almost an everyday occurrence. Good intentions. I'd rather have people judge me by my intentions than my actions. When someone gets upset with you, when someone does wrong in your eyes, keep a phrase in mind. Write this phrase down. Again, somebody does you wrong. Somebody treats you bad. Something happens. Keep this in mind. There's a story behind that. There's a story there. This isn't all there is. What I'm seeing isn't all there is. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Do you mind if I just go by 5-10 minutes over? Okay? Yeah? If you have to leave, I get it. I'm not going to judge you. You can go ahead and go. I will judge him, but I will not judge the rest of you. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, don't you think? That's pretty straightforward. I think that's something that you all know. You just need to be reminded of, that's all. That's all. I think so highly of all of you. I think you're all very, very smart people. I think you know this. But knowing it and applying it, that's where it becomes hard. I want to encourage us to do that to help each other, okay? Now, the second principle is this. The principle of introspection. Introspection. Again, this is RISE, R-I-S-E. This is the I. Have I made a rigorously honest self-evaluation first? Okay? You hearing me? Have I evaluated myself? Have I made a rigorous self-evaluation first? I'm not making this up. This is in the text. You ready? Matthew 7, 3 through 5. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? What's he saying? Look at yourself first. The principle of introspection. Before you begin, whatever happens out there, before you begin to judge that, look inward first. Evaluate yourself first. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your own eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll be able to see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Now listen to this. It says this. You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye. Now there's a phrase here. Then you will be able to see clearly. Now this is a great metaphor, right? This is so deep. It's just so good, so rich, right? So the metaphor is this idea of a plank and removing it so your eye can see. But he wants us to go deeper than just this. He made it funny. It would be like me up here with a big 2x4, a big 8-foot 2x4, holding it in my eye and going up to Tony and go, Tony, you got a little grain of something. Let me get this out right here. And the idea is, how in the heck can I see that thing with this big 2x4 in my eye? And so he made it to be funny, right? But now let's look at the layers of this, the richness of this, right? So I need an introspection and see where it is that I may have. So a speck is a piece of wood, 2x4 is a piece of wood. I may have something bigger. And I look in my own life, and I find in my own life where I fall short. Now, what happens to me when I see it in my own life, and I deal with it in my own life, and then I see it in someone else's life? Well, friends, we have compassion. Like we know, I get it. I get it. You know, hey, let me tell you about my life. In my life, I did da-da-da-da. I see something. I think I could help you. You see the difference? See the difference what self-introspection does? Now you go with compassion and love. That's where the verse comes in, speak the truth in love. Evaluate yourself first. And then you're able to go and you're able to see clearly and go, number one, this speck, this thing, doesn't define this person. Same way it doesn't define me. Same way it didn't define me. Maybe I've dealt with it, maybe I haven't dealt with it yet. But it doesn't define this person. Now I go with compassion. And I go with love. And I go with the intent of betterment, of helping somebody. And so we apply the principle of introspection. Learn to honestly say, listen, vulnerability is so huge and so key to honestly be able to say to somebody, I struggle with that too. I struggle with that too. The third principle is this, the principle of selection. Selection. Is this the right person? Is this the right place? I've had people come up to me before with something similar, like a judgment or whatever, and rightly so. It was needed, to be honest. Right before I was going to preach. Is that the right place or time? Do you think? I'm asking you. Do you think? Probably not, right? Now, did it need to be said? Yeah, I don't disagree. But is this the right place? Is this the right time? Sometimes you need to just keep your mouth shut for another time and another place. Maybe it does need to be said. But maybe, just maybe, huh? Maybe you're not even the person, maybe it needs to be said, but you're not the person to say it. Maybe you're just the wrong person. Maybe someone else needs to say it. Or maybe it's the wrong place. It's the wrong time. So the passage in chapter 7, verse 6 says this. Listen, don't give to dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. Now, this sounds like derogatory language. And it is in our culture, but in the day you have to understand. And you're going to think this is derogatory, but it wasn't in that sense in the day. Dogs and pigs were considered like what the Jews would consider the Gentiles. But not as derogative as we hear when we hear dogs and pigs. They were just unclean. They weren't part of the Jewish way. You follow me? They were Gentiles. They weren't Christians, right? I mean, they weren't Jews. And so this says, don't give to dogs what is sacred, throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. I'm not going to deny that there is, in tribalism, there is a certain degree of what we call insiders, right? Insiders. And what this is saying, sometimes there's a message, and it's for insiders. It's for those that are on the same track, kind of traveling together, and sometimes the message is for insiders. What he's saying is, don't try to go to people who aren't part of your insiders like that and give them this message. What he's saying is what I'm trying to get across to us. Maybe you're not the one. Maybe you're not the one to share it with them. Maybe they shouldn't even hear this message. Maybe it's the wrong place, or it's the wrong time. And here's why I say that, okay? Here's why. You ready for this? So in here, when I talk about life and I talk about about how to live life, right? Hopefully now you're taking it in a context of not where you have to behave in a certain way to get God to love you, or to get to heaven, or you with me? You follow me? You guys know my heart. You guys know where I am on this, right? I'm not asking you to be there, but you know my heart. I don't say things. I say this to make us a better version of ourselves, to make us better humans towards one another. But in that, if someone else hears it that's not in this context, they hear it, they might get the idea that religion is nothing more than behavior modification. Right? That's all religion is. It just wants to control me and tell me what I can and can't do. Right? And that's not true. That's not true. It's actually just a better way to live. Right? That's what Jesus is saying. I can't give you abundant life, and I'm going to give you some pointers, if I could, to help you live an abundant life. You stay away from this kind of stuff. Do this kind of stuff, right? So I tell my kids, listen, you have to be out past midnight. I mean, really, do you have to be? Like, nothing good happens after midnight. Now, that's a generalization. I know some people go out and they work after midnight. I get that. What I'm saying is it if something bad's going to happen, it generally happens when? Later on at night. You know what I mean? Does much bad happen at 4 or 5 or 6 in the morning? Generally not. People are going to do bad. They're usually passed out by then. Right? So nothing, so there's a principle. Go to bed early, get up early. It's a good principle, right? Now, if you're in junior high or high school, that's extremely hard, right? And I get that because you're just in a different place of your life. That's right. You need a lot more sleep, and that's actually a physiological fact, right? My kids sleep so much. That's right, they do. They need a lot of sleep, right? When you get older, like Pete, he sleeps like 3 hours a night, right? I can't wait to get to be your age, Pete. So be careful about this. Be careful about what you say and who you say it to, because you might make faith start to sound like just behavior modification. And our faith, at least the faith that I promote, is not about external modification. It's about internal transformation. Internal transformation. I want you to be changed from the inside out. When you're changed on the inside, it will affect how you behave, right? I always tell people, when people talk about behavior modification, right? About, don't do these things. Everybody listen to me for a minute. If you've tuned out this whole way, this is so important. Behavior modification. Don't do these things, right? And what fuels our behaviors are emotions. Emotions fuel behavior. You behave in a certain way because you emote, right? And you feel. And so you behave in a certain way. And someone will say, well, I can't help it because that's just the way I feel. Granted, I get that. And don't ever tell somebody to stop feeling a certain way. Am I right? Right? Don't ever tell someone. However, this is for you now. What fuels emotion? It's your thoughts. What are you thinking about? How are you thinking? See, thoughts fuel emotion. Emotion fuels behavior. So for me to come in here and just tell you about behaviors that you're doing and you shouldn't do is pointless. For me to talk about your emotions and talk about all that, it's pointless. I want to get internal. How do you think? How do you think? Do you think like you're part of a tribe? Do you think tribalistically? I don't know if I just made that word up or not. I don't know if it's a word. But do you think that way? See, it starts within. It's about transformation. The last thing is this, the principle of elevation. Elevation. Don't reciprocate, elevate. When someone goes low, you go high, right? You've heard that say, take the high road. Take the high road. Matthew 5 says this, have you heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Matthew 5:14 says this, you, listen to me, he's saying this to you, you are the light of the world. Light is used as a metaphor. Light is a good thing. It brings brightness. It brings clarity. You are the light of the world. Let that light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You know, here's the thing. Don't settle for making a point. How many of you like to do that? I love to do that. I love to make my point. Let me just make my point. Don't settle for just making a point. Try to make a difference. It's a completely different way of thinking. Don't settle for making a point. Instead, make a difference. Let me just read. I'm going to finish by reading some scriptures to you, and then we're done. Again, Matthew 5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Psalm 141. Set a guard over your mouth. Watch my lips to keep me from speaking thoughtlessly. This is one I highlight. This is for me right now. That's what I'm trying to do. Keep me from just speaking thoughtlessly. Guard my mouth. I don't want to say anything that I wouldn't say. Let me ask you, have you ever said this? I'm going to tell you something. Now, I would tell them this if they were here. Bull. Don't tell me that. You know what I mean? Well, stop. Next time someone says to you, stop and go, hold on, wait a minute. I have their phone number. Let me call them. I'll put them on speakerphone and then say it. Well, I mean, maybe, right? So just be honest with yourself. That's where the introspection comes in. Be honest with yourself. James says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Colossians 3:8 says, but now you must also rid yourselves of such things as anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips. Colossians 4:6. Let your conversation always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how to answer everyone. Man, what great verses. Someone doesn't think the Bible is like good for your life. I don't know what they're looking at. Like there's that great stuff in here to help me be the best version of me that I could be. Let's stand. Hey, thank you so much for hanging with me. I know I'm 15 minutes late. I really just want to finish this message. I think it's important for us. And I think that if you'll take these things and think about them, it's not that they're mine. This is Jesus telling us how to be fully human. I think it's good stuff. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for this word that it absolutely is a lamp unto our feet. as it says in Psalms, right? A light unto our path. It guides us. It shows us the way, not in making decisions, but in how to live. As each step I take, what's the best way for me to live, to behave, to treat others? That's what it's about. So we thank you for that. I pray for all my friends here today as we go. Help us to keep this on our mind, on our heart, to be better human beings. Give all our ladies a safe trip back here to Pittsburgh. And we just pray that they come back just so refreshed and so energized from their time away. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thanks, friends. Have a great day. Don't forget to sign up for the men's bocce and see Pete if you're